Hello, welcome back to my channel, fellow law enthusiast humans. I am FCA. I am an outside juror, observer. I am not a professional in legal anything. I am doing this just as an aficionado of watching trials and doing some summary updates. I will always make hand gestures when I am giving an opinion or a speculation that is different from just a fact that you can rewatch, and I will link where you can watch the videos that I watched below for more information or just to double check it, because again, I'm a random person on the internet. You don't have to believe me if you don't want to. But let's get into the summary of Jen McCabe's continued testimony on cross-examination of day 8. I do apologize for being a couple days late. I had a very out-of-town plan Saturday, so I just didn't have time to do this. So here we are doing it now. And Jen McCabe's cross-examination continued, and the facade fell hard in this one. If you were not here for my previous videos, this is your first time, hey, you can subscribe if you want some more relatively quick updates and summaries on this trial. Nice to meet you. Join the FCA fam. But what we're talking about is in the previous trial, if you did not see that, it is my speculation that Jen McCabe is behaving very, very differently than she did in the first one, and that her first time was more authentic. She's been more calm, more behaved, more apologetic with Alan Jackson, and the veneer cracked hard because she went into rages. She was being very combative, very argumentative, and just not answering questions in some cases, where she would try to go on these long narratives, and at the end of it, never answered the question that was asked. And that just doesn't look good. Okay, that does not look good. Here is my observational, non-professional, non-legal advice. If you're getting cross-examined, no, it's not personal. They're just doing their job. And to just answer the questions. Even if the question and answer makes you look not great, it's going to look worse if you try to argue it. Let redirect solve your problems. Answer the question on yes or no on cross-examination. Let redirect fix it. That's my advice there. Whatever witness advice, because you're always going to get advised by whoever is talking to you. Typically, it's just tell the truth, tell what you know, keep it simple, blah, blah, blah. Whatever she was given, she just let fly out the door. Like I said, she was arguing about every little thing. The first thing that she was arguing about were some text messages and calls to John O'Keefe, but between 12 a.m. and 12:30 a.m., she has claimed, I don't remember times. It was so many years ago. I don't remember exact dates. It was so many years ago, which makes sense because I wouldn't remember anything either. But the problem was there were certain things. I distinctly remember hearing Karen Read say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. I distinctly remember the last time I talked to John O'Keefe was at 12:18 a.m. and I didn't talk to him after that. And in less than 20 minutes, Alan Jackson points out, roughly every 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, she was calling his phone. Jen McCabe's phone called John O'Keefe's phone. And she said that she didn't make those. She once again claimed that they were butt dials. That she was going back and forth to the door, waiting to see if anyone was there. She was texting John, and that she put her phone in her pocket, and she inadvertently called him multiple times in less than 20 minutes, every 2 minutes roughly. Okay. And there was a very interesting point in the cross-examination where I will try to put it up on screen if I can get the moment right with closed captioning, where she had put up that Alan Jackson pointed out that they got those calls, those missed calls, from John O'Keefe's phone. And Jen says, you could have also gotten those from my phone. I turned my phone over. But the problem was when her phone was extracted, as Alan Jackson pointed out, on the phone records, she didn't have those calls on her phone. She had deleted them. Also, a very interesting point out by Alan Jackson that when they Jen McCabe had said we were doing everything we could to try to save John. He was unresponsive. We didn't know what had happened, and we were trying to help him. I was calling 911. I was giving CPR compressions. And Alan Jackson leaned into that. He was like, are you trained in CPR or life-saving measures? No. Are you a first responder? No. Was Carrie Roberts a first responder or trained in distress? No. Was Karen Read? No. But you were all doing your best. Yes. Do you know anyone at all on Fairview, the road you were on, who is a trained first responder, trained in life-saving techniques? Yeah. Her brother-in-law, Brian Alberts, who was in the house of the lawn that John O'Keefe was on. Why didn't she run in or try to wake them up and go, help John, he's on the ground, or person on the ground? Why didn't you get the person who knew CPR, who was trained as a first responder, to help? And Alan Jackson said it was because you knew better than to go into the house, because you didn't want to connect the house to John O'Keefe. And he said that again when she had argued about calls that she had made with her sister Nicole. Once again, she's arguing, I may have called her, she didn't answer. Why is there 38-second conversation that happened? There wasn't a conversation. Okay, so where's the voicemail? I don't know. I'm not a phone expert. Okay, cool. And then she ran in. We still don't know where the dog is. She ran in, didn't want to alert them too much about something horrible happening. I mean, there's an unconscious man on the lawn. There's something horrible happened. And she once again said that when she went into the house much later, it was just to tell them what was going on. And he goes, and Alan Jackson goes, why weren't you concerned about maybe your sister and brother-in-law being in peril? There's an unconscious man on their lawn. Did you not want to see if maybe something else had happened to them? And she was like, I had no reason to be concerned about what happened to John O'Keefe because he never went in the house. That wasn't my question. And she's like, well, what was your question? And he goes, I didn't get to ask it. You interrupted. And the judge is like, please continue, Mr. Jackson. You knew they weren't in peril. You had no reason to be concerned, did you? No. Why? Because you knew what really happened in that house. And you knew that your brother-in-law and sister weren't in peril. And that was good. It was some good stuff. They had a lunch break, and then after the lunch break, we continued into more text messages. Here are some sus text messages, like from her husband, Jen McCabe. There was a group text between her, Nicole, and Matt McCabe, and Jen McCabe. So the four of them had this little text message conversation where Jen's reporting stuff like, Carrie Roberts is telling them everything. And then Matt McCabe says, ask Chris being Chris Albert, of the Boston Police, to ask questions. Ask Chris to ask questions. Why would they want a familial relation to ask questions as opposed to any other police officer? And then it was also, tell him that the guy never went into the house. This is your friend who died, and you're calling and referring to him as the guy. Not tell them John never went in the house. An instruction. Tell them that the guy never went in the house. How dismissing. And she was like, no, we weren't colluding. It was just that John never went in the house. Like, it's just, yeah, remember, John didn't go in the house. Okay. And Alan Jackson did make the misstep of saying that it was colluding and not communicating or something else. Colluding is a legal thing that has legal implications that he is not allowed to make. There was an objection. Brennan's good with these objections. And they had more back and forth arguing about the text messages about, you know what, if you were trying to talk about what happened, how come Carrie Roberts wasn't involved in that thing? It's because she was on the string. She wasn't a part of what happened that night. And she was like, nothing happened that night except Karen hit him with the car. I didn't know at the time that John was hit by a car. Okay, ended with more missed phone calls and additional butt dials. And overall, this is my opinion, I think that it would behoove the defense if they would recall, if they're allowed. I'm not sure if they're allowed to call not their witness. Not 100% on that. But if they're allowed to, I think it would behoove them after law enforcement testifies to let Jen McCabe testify, because let's remind ourselves that no one who was on the scene or investigating the case directly, any law enforcement officers, have testified yet. The only officer who has testified is the trooper who did the extraction from the phone, and that was really it. No other law enforcement, not even the lead investigator, shock and surprise me, has been called to the stand yet. And I think that that's where it's going to go downhill, and that's why the prosecution is trying to make law enforcement be as back burner witnesses as possible. They need to make their case look good up at the front, and they have done a pretty good job. But especially once Proctor gets up there, I think it's gonna real quick. Now, redirect of Jen McCabe went really well. All of the text messages came in with Brennan. He was like, listen, the defense has cherry picked some of these things that look bad. But if you look at all of these text messages, you'll see there's additional context. Now, that's good. That looks much better for Jen McCabe. And he offered some explanation text messages. Of course, they were also cherry picked, so that's what both sides are going to do. But it did make her look really good. He helped her so much with fixing things about the calls and several of the text messages and the group text messages, because Alan Jackson has really been forcing the outside girl takes the fall, and that girl is Karen Read. And saying, you guys were in this tight little group, you were all interviewed together, you're keeping each other up to date on things, you guys got something going on to blame Karen. And Brennan was like, no, here's all the explanations that you need. So all the text messages will go in, they're all in evidence, so the jury will be able to look through all of that. And I don't know if they need every single one for the case, but I know if I was a juror, I'd want all the tea. It was like, good job, Brennan. You fixed a lot of the problems that defense had poked holes in with Jen McCabe. But it ended up not mattering, because on recross, she just dug herself into a hole once again. Jen was so argumentative and so debative at the end, and she over-explained stuff about the FBI agents, because it was very emphatic. Brennan had said she did her best. She went with every interview. Jen McCabe was at everything and was giving the information over and over and over again. She was an open book witness. And that was true until it was pointed out by Alan Jackson that she suspended her interview after a few questions with the other agents from the FBI. And he goes, you suspended that. And she was like, and I met with them later after getting counsel. I asked for an attorney, and they asked me questions and I answered them. And as you know, that investigation is closed. So I think I helped them very well. I helped clear up misconceptions and misperceptions that they had been told before. Oh, Jen McCabe cleared up misperceptions? And according to her, she's the reason they wrapped up. She tied all of the loose ends together. And the FBI didn't need to investigate any further because she was so good at giving information. Right. It ended on a really high note for the defense. And then we went into the medical examiner. It was very short. We didn't really get much into the case itself. We did a little bit, but we were mostly getting the very important, we need your background, we need you to do what's important information. Because again, the defense is going with the incompetency of this case and of this investigation is just, you should just throw it out, jurors, because there's no way you can get any kind of an accurate verdict with this investigation. So it's very important, and I will say that with every important witness that this applies to, that you get the background and training of these people so they can go, no, I have been trained, I've been doing this job for this many years, I've been this successful, here are my accomplishments, here's what I did to get here. That way it shows they did things by the book, because again, speculation, I'm really sticking with that the prosecution is going to go with Trooper Proctor was wrong, everyone else is okay. You can be suspicious of him, but everyone else did their job well. So keep the investigation in mind, and you can just get mad at him. He's the problem. Not us, him. That's what I think is going to happen from here. And I look forward to seeing more of the medical examiner. And I really am curious about how Alan Jackson is going to get around this hypothermia not being the cause of death when that's what she put as the cause of death. So looking forward to that. Tell me what you're looking forward to. Still in the case, I still want to hear from the dog expert, the medical examiner, which we're there, so excited, and I want to hear from Trooper Proctor. Trooper Proctor is purely for the absolute poop show that is going to happen, and everyone else, I'm genuinely curious about the evidence and how they're going to explain the evidence and deal with cross-examination, because we are still in the prosecution's case. These are all still people being called by the prosecution. So, looking forward to that. Tell me what you're looking forward to, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, my lovely humans.